I rarely put on sunscreen. I like to get in shade, wear hats, things like that, or use melanotan because it does seem to prevent any melanomas from persisting. But it also does seem to have this really protective quality to it as well. If you are telling yourself you're old, it's one of the most dangerous things you can do. And so it's really important to remind yourself that you're doing all these youthful things. The Bulls, when Phil Jackson showed up, they were not even 500, but he was able to create harmony amongst the team because he improved the intra-player communication. And just like musicians, it's that intracellular communication. You'll start to see that there's all these synchronicities in biology as there is in the way that humans interact, the way that we have day-to-day interaction.
All right. Good morning and welcome everybody to the Unreasonable Health Podcast. This is your host of the day, Cade Archibald, and I am really excited to dive in to today's topic. Last night we had a really cool Health Accelerator Challenge. If you're not part of that community and that group, please check it out. Go to acueastwest.com/hack. That's HAC. And this is where we meet weekly in a live setting virtually and go through different health challenges. And I think the challenge that we put together last night is get your carotid artery scan through Vaso Labs. We have that capability in our office now at East West. And so it's a really intriguing scan where you can actually get your artery age. So all around the age reversal. So we can get a baseline and then let's create a strategy to improve. And so those are some big ones from last night. And then we got the peptide of the day, and along with me, as usual, we got Regan Archibald. Regan, how's it going?
It's going awesome.
Nice. Well, I know we got a peptide of the week is melanotan 2. So let's hear a little bit about melanotan 2. Other than just getting super tan, what can we get out of melanotan 2?
Well, yes. Well, primarily, people have used it. Bodybuilders and people use it before they go on vacation to keep their skin tan. And a lot of us just think, oh, it's just a vanity peptide, but actually it's so much more than just that. And there's nothing wrong with having tan skin and wanting to look your best and feel your best and perform your best, no matter what age you are. But I can tell you melanotan 2, if you look at the research behind it, not only does it stimulate the production of what's called eumelanin. Eumelanin is what allows your skin to tan. But it also has potential effects that we hear quite often on sexual dysfunction. So, if you have any issues with arousal or erectile dysfunction, melanotan has very positive, outcomes on it. The one disadvantage is you can get a little bit nauseated when you take this. But melanotan 2 is something that, Kate, I use off and on throughout the year, especially as the summer starts to come on, because I rarely put on sunscreen. I like to get in shade, wear hats, things like that, or use melanotan because it does seem to prevent any melanomas from persisting. But it also does seem to have this really protective quality to it as well. And so melanotan 2 is also good for appetite suppression. So if you have an overexpressed appetite, and then I found it to be really good for people who have any kind of mold toxicity. It seems to help there. So get yourself some melanotan 2 for those of you who are looking to get out in the sun without getting damaged by the sun.
Perfect. All right. Well, that is a really cool peptide of the week. So everybody take a check out Melanotan 2. Love it. All right, well, let's dive in to today's topic. You know, we've been talking about some of the hallmarks of aging and hallmarks of age reversal and some strategies around that. So I'm excited to kind of further that dialogue and conversation.
Well, and I think we've hit on a lot of these things, and I'm going to share my screen with you guys. So because I know some of you prefer reading, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see it. And for those of you listening on the podcast, we do have a forum, so I would definitely recommend jump into our YouTube's channel, East West Health. On YouTube, you'll find us. So the 9 hallmarks of age reversal. We've been talking about these lifestyle interventions, and today, Cade, you talked about the Langer study yesterday, and the Langer study. I think if we look at the 9 hallmarks of aging, the Langer study gives you perfect context to why these are important, because we've done a lot of work around the genomic instability. We've talked about that, and we'll kind of go through, and I'll give you guys a rapid fire today so you have a reference place for the future. But the Langer study, Kate, what did you learn as you were talking about that last night? Anything surprise you from that study?
Yeah, I think it's just a really rad study. Whoever came up with the idea is brilliant. Dr. Langer, obviously.
Yeah, out of Harvard. Yep.
Yeah, but I think the whole concept's really interesting. But just the fact that your mindset and believing something can actually affect your biology is really, at the core level, you can reverse your age biologically just by believing and kind of reliving 20 years back.
That's it. Yeah, and so what they did is they took 2 groups, and one group was the placebo group, the other group was the control group, or the study group. And the study group were told only talk about things that happened 20 years in the past. Now, this was 1979, so in 1959. It's they're talking about things post World War II. This is when the White Sox won the Major League Baseball championship. So they're talking about baseball. They have music that was playing in that era. They only had magazines, newspapers, and so everybody had to engage in this style of living and talk as if they were 20 years younger. And the control group just went to the same kind of house and retreat, but it wasn't decorated, 20 years older. It didn't have the same feel. And what they found is in all the measurements that they did on this Langer study, they found that everything improved in these individuals. And she actually wrote a book on this called Counterclockwise. Mindful Health and the Power of Possibility, and her name's Ellen J. Langer. And but she found that not only did in the intelligence, visual memory, that was all assessed, and it was it was like a 7-day study, and it was so short. And her conception of this study was that these men in their 70s and 80s might start changing the clock in their brain just by the way they look at things. Because how often do you hear people say, "Oh, I'm just getting older"? I hear people in their 30s like, "Yeah, I'm getting old," and it's like, wait a second. That's pretty crazy. But one of the things they did the same test before these people went and after, at the end of the experiment. And so they all, every single person in the experimental group who acted as if they were in 1959 appeared to be younger than the control group, and even showed greater improvements on the intelligence test. So the group that was in the placebo, the group that was in the group that was in the study actually performed 63% better than the ones intellectually than the ones who weren't. So they had better grip strength. Overall, they had better balance. So, so some pretty amazing things. So how does this relate to the 9 hallmarks of age reversal? Well, if you are telling yourself you're old, it's one of the most dangerous things you can do. And so it's really important to remind yourself that you're doing all these youthful things. And yesterday, I like to remind myself to stay young with some cellular and stem cell rejuvenation. And so yesterday I had an IV of some human umbilical cord tissue. And then I also did cerebral lysin. And the crazy thing about that, and cerebral lysin is not easy to find, but cerebral lysin does seem to have some benefits for cognition. It can flush out a lot of those beta amyloid plaques in the brain. And holy smokes, I feel energized. It's been crazy, Cade. You got to try the cerebral lysin. I know you did the IV when you're here last Friday, or I think Saturday is when Amy did yours, right?
Yeah, we did exosomes and umbilical cord tissue, and yeah, that went really well. So, did you do the cerebral lysine with your cells and
Yeah?
exosomes? So you just did it all together.
Yep. Yeah. Amazing outcomes. Pretty wild.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I think the one thing I've noticed is, and my sleep's been getting disrupted by Olive. She's like, it's been kind of a rough last few nights. And that's one thing, if you do some of these regenerative procedures, sleep is really critical. Like your body just wants to recover and heal. And it's been a little extra fatigue, but yeah, on the downhill of that, or on the kind of other side of it, and feeling really good now. The first couple of days, I could tell like my body was just there was stuff happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Almost put you in a healing response, because it forces you to rest more, is what I've noticed.
Yeah.
But I slept amazing last night. Yesterday I was noticing, and even this morning still, it's pretty early, but I was noticing filler words, and I was really cognizant of my communication and other people's communication. It was really interesting, and it's created more clarity mentally. But I think the biggest thing that I've noticed so far in the cerebral lysin is my brain just feels a little brighter. It just feels happier. And it's been a long time. It's been years since we've had access to it. We've got the cerebral pep, which is a fragment of cerebral lysin. But now we've got the whole complex for our brain rejuvenation series. And so, man, talk about an upgrade. It's been amazing. So as we look at these 9 hallmarks of aging, one of the things that you want to continually do is look at your mindset around these, because there are treatments available. So the 9, just to remind everybody, we've been on a bit of a journey on these 9 hallmarks over the last 5-6 weeks. But number 1 is genomic instability. So this is where your DNA is not replicating properly, and this happens when you're exposed to toxins or radiation, and just even exposed to this thing called aging. Your genes start to fall apart. And so this is where you can do spermidine, resveratrol, vitamin D, curcumin, even the fatty acids, and then getting rid of all of the vegetable oils like soybean, corn, cottonseeds oil. Those can be very pro-inflammatory. Anything that causes oxidative stress is going to be problematic. And what's interesting is, now that we're doing the interior media carotid artery scan and looking at the age of people's arteries, we're starting to see that, that genomic instability will show up faster and faster in certain people. And so we want to start reversing that as quickly as possible. And I had a patient yesterday who asked, well, what do we do about this plaque buildup? And I think there's some very interesting things. Some of the plaque is just like cement. It's not going to move, but a lot of it, what we're seeing is if you do the things that are in the age reversal, the 9 hallmarks of age reversal, these are the core tenets that will get your blood vessels incredibly healthy. And then the one thing that we're adding in is like the nattokinase and the lumbrokinase. Lumbrokinase, that's the earthworm, Cade. That's the Di Huang in Chinese medicine. And so those are going to be some super interesting things that we've seen start kind of peel off that plaque in a safe way. You don't want plaque to get dislodged and create, some type of either a thrombosis, like or a lung clot, or pulmonary embolisms don't end well, and neither do brain embolisms. So there's gentle ways with using some of these substances that can slowly just open up your blood vessels, because every time there's a clot, and especially if you have high blood pressure, that clot's just going to put more pressure in your system, which starts draining your kidneys and really can damage your energy levels. So these 9 hallmarks of age reversal, these lifestyle interventions, any of you can start doing these right away. So number 2 is telomere attrition. That's the shortening of the telomeres, once again, also caused by inflammation, oxidative stress. And so regulating your circadian rhythms by getting to bed early, taking cordyceps, astragalus, ginseng with some DNA or with some NAD is all going to help your DNA stay younger. That's a powerful one. And we talk about the peptides for these, and this is where epitalin is very well studied, well documented as a telomerase enzyme. And that is a peptide. I actually spoke to a client a couple of days ago, and they said, I love epitalin. She said she hasn't slept that good in 20 years. And we've heard this time and time again, but it's just always nice to get that reinforcement with some people if that deficiency, or if that expression of epitalin and that telomerase enzyme in your body and in your brain is depleted over time from stress and telomere attrition, then there's ways of rebooting it. So pretty darn amazing. Okay, that's what you're going to need as soon as Olive starts sleeping great. We got to get you on another cycle of epitalin.
Yes. Yeah, I got a whole stack. I actually had them all structured and ordered on Saturday, but for whatever reason, it wouldn't let me submit that. So gotta go circle back and make sure I get all my upgraded peptide protocol.
Yeah, get that thing rocking, because and I don't know if you talked about this last night in the hack, Cade, but we had a Go Wellness event over the weekend. We hosted about 20 different doctors who came in, and we all did the kind of the equivalent of our longevity retreats at East West, and people got therapies. We put them on the Vibe board through the biohacking stations. We had really phenomenal speakers. One of my favorite was Garrett Gunderson's talk, and he's got his new book coming out in October called Money Unmasked, and he goes through. He's a stand-up comedian too, and he's been on the podcast a couple times. Good friend of ours, but that was one of my highlights of Go Wellness, along with talking about the 9 hallmarks of age reversal. But what was yours, Cade?
Yeah, I think Garrett's was definitely a highlight, especially from entertainment value. Just like he's an amazing presenter. He's a comedian now, an actor. Like I think he's just super dynamic guy. And then the other, I think just the most exciting thing we're adding in, and I talked about this a little last night, was the carotid artery scans. Just being able to have like an age and some objective data that says, okay, this is where you're at. you can make improvements on this, and let's see what we can do to get your cardiac age reduced. So yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, because we're kind of a software company, right? We do all the tests that look underneath the hood, and we look at your urine and your saliva and your blood and your stool, and we get all this data from it, and it's all things, it's a snapshot of your physiology. But your anatomy, we don't do a lot with the hardware unless you bring in an MRI or you bring in your CT scan. Like, we've sent many people to Steve Marler's company, Advanced Imaging, down in Texas, and that's super helpful. But now you can come in and we can look at your hardware with our ultrasound and get you some real-time data in about 24 hours. And so it's eye-opening.
Yeah, really exciting and really cool technology, how it's been advanced. So yeah, that was one of my big takeaways, especially from from an audience and from our clients and patient standpoint. I think that can be a really good tool to measure how well their programs are going.
Yeah, because we had a couple of the doctors in the group, like Tara and Paula, they reversed their carotid artery age significantly. And so it woke them up to the fact that, man, one of our mantras is no death by neglect. And, if you don't know what's going on in your arteries, well, figure it out, because that can be an area of neglect in your health. So the third hallmark of aging is epigenetic alteration. So as many of you notice, as we age, gravity starts to pull our skin down. It takes us longer to warm our bodies up before we exercise, takes longer to cool down. There's just things that change, and that's okay. But a lot of that is these epigenetic changes. And so what is really critical, and this is why having a mentorship program with our functional medicine team, with your health coach, with Tristan, your fitness advisor, we can help you spot the areas that are causing this epigenetic damage. And then we'll work at removing it, because our job is to simply remove the triggers in your body and build up deficiencies. If you look at it from that core flow, and then we're always analyzing, optimizing, and transforming. So we analyze all the right tests to figure out where the epigenetic alteration is. And then we optimize the pathways, and that's where we use peptides, we use stem cell rejuvenation, and we use cell core along with herbs. And so this is our Eastern and Western medical approach. And then what we find is the transformation really happens when you have mentorship. And without mentorship, you just don't make nearly the amount of changes. And a lot of people think, oh, that's the least important part of my healing journey. I'd have to argue that it's actually the most important part. I mean, how many of you have read a book and you're like, that was a really good book? Like, I've read so many of Dan Sullivan's books, and I'm like, those are really amazing books. But when I'm with him in person, it's a whole different experience. And Cade, you probably had that experience because you've read his books for years. And then when you met him and learned directly from him, what was the big difference that happened to you?
I was just amazed at how he can, like, his thinking tools, and because that's where he's brilliant, because he speaks really well and he's got these great, cool concepts. But then when you actually dive into some of his thinking tools and how he speaks, and, just being able to think about problems or challenges or whatever you're trying to accomplish a little bit differently, that's where it's been really cool. And I think, you've done an amazing job of taking kind of his concepts from a business organization structure and putting it into a health optimization structure. And it's awesome. Like, this tool right here is really cool.
Yeah. Inspiration and the work I've done with Dan. So the mentorships, and I find it's hard for people to be mentored if they don't trust themselves. And I had that realization this morning as I was reaching out to another one of our mentors, Charlie. I was thanking him for referring the founder of Planet Fitness, and really excited to work with. But I was just, we're having some conversations, and I realized like it's much easier to bring on a mentor who they can help you get to the next level when you're already confident in yourself, because you know who you want to work with and who you don't. And it's pretty binary at this stage now that I've worked with so many different mentors. And I would encourage you to, if you're like, man, I really want to work with East West, and I'd like to engage and get my blood labs ran, or maybe you're on the fence. Well, the first thing that I would recommend that you do is get really comfortable with who you are, because the more comfortable you are with who you are, and the more clarity you have on that, then you'll know where you want to go. If you don't know where you're at in the present, it's kind of like a map does you no good if you don't have a reference point. You can look at a map all day, but if you don't know where you land on that map, you're still lost, right? I have the best map in the world, but I have no clue where I am. Well, that's the problem with mentorship. And that's a lot of the problem that people face when they come into the healthcare field is they have so many different directions, but they actually don't know where they are. So, all right, so let's go to number 4, loss of proteostasis. Now, proteins are really important because we want you to have a muscled up future. And so getting the right amount of proteins at the right time and breaking those down are really necessary. So one of the things we're going to use is the thymosin beta 4 frag, the BPC157 pure, and then add in some enzymes to your meals, and that makes things really nice. I didn't mention some of the things on the epigenetic alteration, but this is where the heavy metal and environmental toxin binder from Cellcore can really help. And then make sure you optimize your hormones. Use, like Fedosia agresta, maybe enclomiphene, ganadorelin. These are all really great ways of increasing your testosterone and your hormones naturally. The 5th thing is deregulated nutrient sensing. And so as we age, and I was just talking to one of our 84-year-old clients yesterday, and she's so sweet, and you know who you are, and I appreciate you. And she's doing so well. Her labs improve every year. It's amazing. And she has better energy. She's still playing tennis. Now she's getting into pickleball. But she said, man, there's so many supplements that I take. And I mentioned to her, I said, well, as we get older, the problem is our bodies, our cells aren't quite as sharp as they used to be. They don't take in the nutrients the way that we want them to. And so it's really important to constantly be doing cleanses. And this is where Cellcore is really important. That's foundational steps 1 through 4. Do that once or twice a year. And then using some natural herbs and minerals to help create insulin sensitivity in your body, because insulin is that first hormone that starts to break down with deregulated nutrient sensing. So berberine can be helpful. Berberine also softens plaque in the arteries. Lots of good research there. Chromium, cinnamon, those create an insulin-friendly zone. And then make sure you're keeping your brain sensing nutrients by alpha GPC, aniracetam, NuPep. Those seem to have a really good benefit on the brain too. And get your cerebral lysin. Doing that IV that was amazing yesterday. I had a great day, and I'm hooked up to an IV as I'm on Zoom calls, and so I was teasing one of our clients. Is like, hey, look, no one's done this IV. If I die, then just call the office and let them know they need to come back. And if they want, maybe they'll just leave me for a while just to make sure he's fully dead. But yeah.
So did you did a pretty long drip with it just in the bag?
Yeah, we wanted to, because it's using it. We've always used it sub-Q, and I was doing a bigger dose because that's kind of what the literature shows. And so Amy just she plays it safe, which I love. Dr. Steinley and our team is just such a great medical provider. I don't think you guys, I think you guys do. You guys realize what a gift she is. And so, yeah, she just wanted to drip it slow. And then I ended up speeding it up as we went. It's like, I think we're good. So
nice.
Yeah. All right, so mitochondrial dysfunction. So how many of you would love better energy? And this is the one, that starts to deteriorate and you go into a cell danger response. But methylene blue, NAD, adding in cordyceps, astragalus, ginseng, these are all great ways. And then the other thing that you can really do is use MOD-SC, 5-amino-1-MQ. These are great peptides to boost your mitochondria in great ways. Number 7 is cellular senescence. So this is when the Hayflick limit is reached, and that's Leonard Hayflick. He discovered that cell lineages basically have about 40 to 50 cycles because your cells are dying all the time and they're being replaced. But each lineage of cell can only have about 40 or 50 rotations, and then that cell lineage just becomes senescent. And so this is where using the nano-V in the clinic, using some of the light therapies can be really helpful. And then the cellular rejuvenation, doing that, not only will that help number 7, which is cellular senescence, but it also helps number 8, which is stem cell exhaustion. Doing that once or twice a year. And it's for some of you who have really big health goals, even more, or if you beat yourself up for the last couple of decades, that could be one of the best ways to stopping cellular senescence. You can add in quercetin, curcumin, fisetin, nicotinamide riboside, resveratrol, and then making sure you're exercising will really help in number 7. And then number 8 is the stem cell exhaustion, like I mentioned. This is when the stem cells are always there. They're waiting to be called into action. And so you can activate these cells through fasting. You can do it through exercise. You can also do it by eating copious amounts of cruciferous vegetables that are nicely cooked. And then add in rhodiola, some of the bioregulator peptides, vitamin D3 and K2. And then do your umbilical cord rejuvenation. It's been amazing. And then finally, number 9 is altered intracellular communication. Cade, when you hear that, what comes to mind? How would you explain that in kind of a simple way?
Yeah, so I think just looking at how cells communicate with each other, because that's like our cells in our body, they're all they're all trying to communicate with each other. And when that gets altered or that's not optimal, that's like the beautiful thing with peptides is they open up pathways for better signaling, better cell signaling, better cell communication. But if those cells aren't communicating well, we're going to have different breakdown, different malfunction. And so really optimizing your cell to cell communication is key for a lot of hormone production, hormone usage, all those things.
Absolutely, no question about it. And I like how you said there's like this breakdown, that it's the same thing that happens in organizations, it happens in families, it happens in marriages, is when the communication starts breaking down, things get really hard, because with communication, there's an attention that needs to be paid, and then there's intention. And if there's a lack of either one on either side of that equation, then the communication starts to drop and the entire relationship drops. And so one of the ways you can correct this is making sure you're resetting that HPA axis. So keep your body in a calm, relaxed state, and think of how much better you communicate when you're not stressed. I mean, what percentage do you communicate? How much does your communication improve when you're not stressed, Cade?
I would say like 100x. When you're stressed, communication is very challenging and very difficult, hard to articulate. Whereas when you're not, usually it can flow out. You can, it can happen a lot easier and simpler, and you can usually get across what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, it's wild. And the things that we always regret, we say, man, if I could have a do-over, I would not have said that. And it's usually when we're emotional. And we make the worst decisions when we're emotional and we say worst things. So it's the same thing in our body. If there's not great communication, then disease starts to show up. And so this is where balancing your circadian rhythms with the 3-2-1 method, no food 3 hours before bed, no water 2 hours before bed, and then no screen time 1 hour before bed. Add in some cortisol managers, some adaptocrine, leave out the sugar, and everything will get better in your life. And, speaking of communication, I've just finished listening to Phil Jackson and Rick Rubin on a podcast called Tetragrammation. And it's Rick Rubin's new podcast. And I don't even know what the word means. Do you know what tetragrammation means, or does anybody?
I'll have no clue.
Yes, I did cerebrolysin, but I still, for some reason, that word never appeared in my brain, like what it meant. But yeah, it's fascinating because I've always been like, if you grew up in the 90s, and Cade, you grew up in the 2000s, but Michael Jordan is still like, I mean, the Bulls, that whole era was just such a fun time. The music in the 90s. And it's cool hearing those two talk about how music and basketball kind of work, hand in hand. They're both very kind of Zen, Buddhist, more philosophy, being present in the moment. But I definitely recommend you listen to that conversation because they're both exceptional communicators. And Phil Jackson, I mean, some of the stories he was telling about Dennis Rodman and the Bulls and what he went through.
Awesome stories.
Yeah, it was awesome. And then, just hearing Rick Rubin has really inquisitive questions about, what is it that is that X factor in the athletes that, there's some like Vince Carter who they're really good players, but they didn't make it to the level of like Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan. They just didn't have quite the killer instincts like the other ones did. And it's the same. Rick Rubin was talking about the way that bands play, and you can take a drummer out of a band and just put a new drummer in and have him play the same lines, and it completely disrupts the rhythm of the band. Whereas, a band, it takes on its own energy. And so you put a group of 5 or 6 humans together, or however big the band is, and they take on a life of their own. It's similar to a team, and so you can have a basketball team, and even though they don't have any great players, or maybe they have all great players, like the Bulls when Phil Jackson showed up, they were not even 500, but he was able to create harmony amongst the team because he improved the intra-player communication. And just like musicians, it's that intracellular communication with musicians. And so I see that as, some of the hallmarks of aging is look at the biology, because there's this expression in Chinese medicine. They say, you are the microcosm of the macrocosm. So if you can look at the universe, look at nature, you'll start to see that there's all these synchronicities in biology as there is in the way that humans interact, the way that we have day-to-day interactions. It's not as complicated as we make it. So that's the 9 hallmarks of aging right there.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Regan. And I did look up, it's tetragrammaton. Is that what it is?
Yeah, grammaton. Yeah.
So it's old Hebrew term. So Yahweh, name of the God of the Israelites, representing the biblical pronunciation of YHWH, the Hebrew name revealed to Moses in the book of Exodus, consisting of the sequence of the consonants Yadi. Yeah, I'm not going to try to say that, but it just, more of a Hebrew term. So interesting.
But so what does it mean?
So essentially, where God is said to be bestowed the name which is above every name. So it's kind of like, this is the top of the pyramid, the food chain, whatever you want to say there.
Oh.
Like, similar, you could put it in the same preference as God, I guess.
Okay. Well, great. Well, it's a good podcast if you guys want to check it out. Well, this has been awesome. I really appreciate all of you guys. Thanks for being part of our amazing community. And, really love the opportunity to work with each one of you to help you reverse these hallmarks of aging, because it's a fun process. And I love going into the clinic and I see you guys getting stronger, getting more fit. I love it when you guys fly in and I haven't seen you for 6 months, in some cases a year, and you guys look better, you're feeling better, you're performing better. That's what this is all about. And so the 9 hallmarks of age reversal are what we're doing every single day in the clinic. So I really appreciate you guys, and you guys enjoy the rest of your day.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Have an amazing day.